Self-awareness. What does it mean, and are you self-aware? There was a survey a couple years ago, and it was done with a healthcare organization. And they were trying to gauge why self-care practices, wellness programs were really not working well. And one of the things they came up with was when they did the survey, the people weren't self aware. They didn't know what they needed. And because they didn't know themselves, their body, their mind, their spirit, when they engaged in these self care practices, they didn't know why they were doing them. And also, they lost interest in it very quickly because they didn't know what suited them. So, it's all about self awareness, is the first step in authenticity. And we've been talking about that. I know it's Heart Month, and most of the time, February, everyone talks about the heart. Well, I really believe that our authenticity, our self awareness begins in our heart because it begins with knowing ourselves and that emotional engagement. Before I introduce my other panelists, I'll introduce myself. I am Teresa Palmer. I've been the interim host here on Motivational Mondays on the Own It platform for about 3 months, and I will be continuing at least until the end of February. I'm a holistic cardiology nurse practitioner, and I am known as the nurse who connects individuals to their heart. And in doing so, I connect them to their ability to be self aware. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to my fellow panelists, Nathaniel Ross, and let him introduce himself and let him give us his take on self awareness.
Hello, everyone. My name's Nathaniel Ross. With Abundance Legacy Inc., a personal growth and development organization. Awareness. That's a tough one for me. I do understand the law of awareness and how which is a universal law, universal principle. Um, I have never really tried to articulate to someone else how to become aware. So this is a little bit challenging for me tonight, but that's okay because we're here to about growth, right? So that's going to make me tax my brain a little bit. Um, Awareness is, and let me. I'm not sure this answers the question, but when I teach classes and talk about the law of awareness, I talk about people who you out you know what kind of car you have, you know the color of it, you know the entire makeup of what your car is, whether it's old or new. You're driving. Someone uh, goes out and buy a new car or a newer car. Um, no one sends out a memo to the rest of the world saying Teresa bought a new car. But when Teresa gets that newer car or that new car, she now starts to see all those same cars around her. And that's the law of awareness in effect, where the cars have always been there. You haven't paid attention to them, but now that it's in your in your possession and new, your awareness kicks in, and it looks like everybody's driving the same car that you're driving, or you start to at least see them on a very frequent basis, and think, "Oh wow, why do I always see these cars now?" And that's the universal law kicking in of awareness. So, how do you articulate or explain that? I'm not sure, but I understand how it works. I know it when I see it. And I it's almost like for a personal growth, it's stepping outside of your body and being able to see yourself as a separate entity or person. How do you get someone to do that and understand that? I don't know. But those people who are aware can see their own behavior. They can hear their the language that they're using, the vocabulary. Um, they can understand how they fit into the environment that they're in because they're outside looking in. Um, I'm stumped as to how you teach that to someone.
Yeah, you gave a good explanation. When you said the awareness all of a sudden of all these other cars around you. Well, self awareness is being aware of yourself, what I call your
Hmm.
inner landscape. That's your feelings, your emotions, not just going through the day. We often do it robotical. And we're also conditioned as adults to look outside of ourselves. We're told how to act, what to do, whether it be through formal organizations, informal organizations, a work environment, any kind of culture. We're told this is what we do, and we identify with that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but we become over identified where we lose ourselves, who we are in the process. And if you ask a lot of people who they are, they could tell you all the outside things. I'm a nurse. I'm a this. I'm a that. But is that really self awareness? Self awareness is who are you on the inside? How do you feel? What do you feel? And what do you need to make your life the very best it can be? And all that starts within. And I know it's Heart Month. February is always Heart Month, and everyone talks about the heart. And yes, I do too. But I think what we miss and what we don't talk about enough is that inner landscape of the heart, that our heart is more than a pump, that our heart is our seat of our self awareness, of our emotions, of processing, taking in and processing emotions. And this is how we become self aware. So, to be self aware, to get to know yourself, really isn't that difficult. It's just spending time with yourself. And I think that's the big difficulty because we're taught to be busy all the time. That's what we're taught. I remember an old saying, I don't know if it's still around, and said, idle hands do no good. Well, idle hands mean that you're sitting there doing nothing. But maybe you're reflecting on something. Maybe you're reflecting on how you're feeling. Maybe you're looking at yourself. And it's only through this stillness that we could connect with ourselves and we could connect with who we are. So it all starts with being still. And I recommend to all my clients, my patients, 5 minutes twice a day is all you have to do. Just sit there, quiet, no phone, no distractions, and just see what comes up. A good question to ask yourself for self awareness is, what am I feeling now? Not how am I feeling? Because how, you could give yourself a response that could say happy, sad, whatever, bored. But when you say, what am I feeling now? You actually have to describe it. And that's where you become aware. So I'm going to let you take it from here. And, what are your
Okay.
thoughts? If you want to go in a different direction, that's fine. You know what we do on
No,
the Own It platform.
yeah, no, I'm thinking, the more I think about it, the more I do help people become self-aware, but through different exercises.
Mhm.
Uh, one of the I'll share two quick ones with you. One is I teach people to be able to say who they are. And like you said, most people want to say, "Oh, I'm a doctor, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a father, I'm a brother." And that's like, no, that's labels. That's stuff that you do. We got to get to being who are you being, not doing, but who are you being. And I take them through an exercise that help them to understand who they are, the essence of who they are, and that's that all that inner work. And this, and once they can discover who they are, like, for myself, and I'm actually going to be doing um, a, a coaching session around this on Wednesday, um, and how to identify who you are. And I really can't go into it here because it's too long. But for me, I am a um, confident leader uh, that operates from compassion and love. And I don't have to say anything that shows up in any space that I show up in, wherever I show up. And that's the inner work that you do and understand in order for people to understand the essence of who you are. And like with anything, there's a positive side and a negative side, right? So if I'm confident, a confident leader, it also means that I'm an insecure follower because you got to look at the whole picture. And in personal growth and development, we want to continue to understand who we are, how we operate, and we're not exempt from the positive, negative forces of the universe. What makes me the positive, which makes me that uh, good leader, that which makes me that confident leader, that compassionate leader that operate from love, is learning the tools of how to turn it on and keep it on. But being human, if the other side comes out too. So I just have to have the tool set in order to when it shifts over to the insecure leader, right? The selfish person comes out. I got to have the tools to get back, right? So people may see me, the essence of who I am, 90 to 95% of the time positive, but that 5%, that insecureness comes out. Um, and my job is to keep working at it to get it back to the positive side, right? The other thing we do is an acknowledgement exercise where I get to do a quick assessment, write down, and acknowledge people for being whatever it is that they do career wise, for them being able to do that, for them being a sibling, a son, a daughter, a mother, because we don't acknowledge people too much. We're used to giving now acknowledgments to people, but we're not used to receiving acknowledgments. And in this particular exercise is getting in touch with how you feel.
Mm.
And I must say, I just did last week a 71-year-old man who has probably only been acknowledged from his admission twice in life.
Wow.
And there's a lot of people walking around like that, that just, it's life. I live every day as it come and not in touch with who they are, not in touch with how they feel. Um, so again, I know exercises to get people in touch with things and how to bring about a difference, but I'm not sure how to say I can get someone from here to there, right?
Yeah, I think they have to get there themselves, in all honesty.
Yeah.
We could give the tools. And for 30 years, I've been giving people the tools, how to work with themselves, how to acknowledge who they are, how to know what they want. Because that's an important piece too with healthcare. Because in healthcare, we tend to give our power away. We tend to give it away to the provider, whether it be a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant. We give it away to people. And we want them to tell us what to do, how we feel, how we should be feeling, when really it starts with us. And we need that power because it's that power that not only helps us through our daily lives, but also helps us to heal. And I mean physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It's very empowering to know who you are. And yet we kind of put that off to the side. It's important to know what triggers you too. What gets you angry? And how do you respond to that? Do you respond in a way that still shows people that you could handle your emotions? Or do you kind of fly off the handle? Are you even aware of that? I think a lot of times if we really looked at our behavior, we wouldn't do it. All of a sudden somebody starts screaming about something, or they get very annoyed about something, or they get very abrupt about something. And I don't think they realize they're doing that. I think they're triggered, and their response is to reply or react in a certain way. And I think once we start looking at ourselves and we look at those triggers, then we could take that trigger and we could turn it around into either a more positive or a more gentle way of responding to something. I don't think we have to get as angry. And I think there's a lot of triggers out there for people. And I think once people get triggered, they don't know how to handle their emotions, and it triggers all sorts of behaviors. And again, being self-aware, you could decide, do I want to go along with this behavior, or do I want to change it? Because you're the only person that has the power to change. Anything outside of you can't change you. Sure, you could go to a different environment, could leave a job, you could go to another job, but it's your inner landscape. Who you are is what's going to follow you there. And I think a lot of times that's why people get unhappy with jobs, because they expect the environment to fix them. Sure, it's important to have a friendly environment, to have people that you get along with, to have that culture that you resonate with. But also, you have to be the one that could also bring that into the environment. And I think we wait for it to be brought to us. And the next thing you know, we're not happy with what we're doing. Oh, I left this job for this, and it's the same thing here. Well, it's not the same thing. It's because you're the same way. And you're
Hmm.
bringing that into the environment. So, what are your thoughts about that?
I think you're right on point. I'll share one of my personal how I overcame road rage. Someone cuts you off, you get pretty pissed off. And I used to, when I was in corporate America, I had to drive from my home to my office was it's about an hour ride, but
Ooh,
Philadelphia, depending on traffic, it could be up to 2 hours ride,
mm,
2 to 3 hours depending on traffic, right? So it might be a 2 hour ride to work, 12 hours in the office, and then 2 hours back, which makes for a very long day. And you're trying to get home and people are driving stupidly, or at least that's how you feel that they're driving, right? Someone cuts you off and that anger just comes out and the road rage comes out. And I admit I had that problem and I had to step back from that and learn why is it that I get triggered, as you say, right? And when I started examining that and examining my own behavior, what I realized was that I was being self-centered. It was all about me,
mm,
as opposed to being about others. So I worked on it, and when I would drive, it was like, and somebody cut me off. I'm like, I'm sure they didn't wake up and go, oh, I'm gonna cut him off today. Or someone did something in traffic, and I think they're going too slow. I don't know. They could have a medical condition. They could have gotten a phone call with some bad news or something along those lines. And when I made it about other people and I took in consideration them and then thought about what type of compassion I want if it was me, my road rage went away. Um, but that was doing that inner work, that inner awareness.
mhm.
Even though it was external, something external causing it, I had to internally look at my behavior and my feelings and my thoughts. And once I changed that, I don't get upset on the road anymore.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. I'm going to
again,
share. Go on.
no, no, no. No, I'm just saying again, I can share how I did things and I can help people learn lessons, but I'm not sure, again, it's articulating how do you get from here to here. I think you're right on point that people got to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, they do. And I'll share a story that happened to somebody I know. And it's one of my mentors. And he was driving in California and he had to do this conference that he was holding. And he got a little behind on the road because in California, Los Angeles, you can't predict the traffic. So all of a sudden, he's going, finally, a break in traffic, and he says, "Oh, I'm finally going to make it." Well, all of a sudden, there's in front of him, this person is driving erratically, kind of going here, there, whatnot, trying to cut into different lanes. Well, he cut my mentor off as my mentor's trying to get into the left-hand lane. He cut him off, speeding, speeding, speeding. So all of a sudden, they both get off at the same exit. And now there's a light and there's traffic backed up at the exit. So my mentor decides that he's going to give this person a piece of his mind. Gets out of the car, he's angry, and he says, "I have to be at such and such a place, and I'm going to be late, and I've got 1,000 people that have paid to see me and get my help, and I have to get there. And the way you're driving, you cut me off, this and that." Well, the person turned around to him and said, "I'm a surgeon. I'm trying to get to the hospital because there's a trauma and I'm needed in the operating room." Well, my mentor said he, at that point, wanted to disappear into the roadway because he didn't know the circumstance of why he thought that person was almost deliberately acting erratically to prevent him from getting someplace. Again, he made it all about him. He didn't realize that this person was driving like that because they really had a place to be and they wanted to save a life. And somebody in an operating room or an emergency room needed them. So again, we make it about us, but not being self aware. We just make it
Mhm.
about, I'm angry, I need this, I want that, I need to be here, I need to go there, get out of my way. Without really, if we were self aware, what we would do is take a deep breath, calm ourselves down, and say, "Okay, I'm not getting there as fast as I want unless I have a helicopter. I can't get there any faster. And that person that cut me off, I don't know why they cut me off, but perhaps there's a reason for it. And I shouldn't let it bother me because I'm sure that that person has their own things going on." So I think the self awareness, too, is not only looking at us, but it's also it's really looking at how what we do affects others. If if I get into road rage, it's going to affect other people around me. And it's not going to help me get there any faster. I mean, how could I get there any faster? So I think, again, the self awareness is all about the best question to ask ourselves at any given time. And I always tell my patients and my clients every day, at least 3 times a day, ask yourself, what am I feeling now? And give yourself an answer. Be quiet for a second. What am I feeling? And answer that question for yourself. And that keeps you in the present moment. And when you're in the present moment, you're self aware. Once you have self awareness, from there, you could determine what you need. And that's also an important piece of self care. Is maybe you're not somebody that needs yoga or needs cycling. Maybe you need to walk in nature, but unless you know yourself, you don't know these things. And in the meantime, you've either spent money taking yoga lessons, maybe joining a gym that you really prefer to be in nature. But if you don't know yourself and acknowledge these things for yourself, You just go ahead and you say, well, okay, every January we make intentions. Everybody goes to the gym. The gym is having a special. It's $5 a month. Going to go to the gym. Well, you get there, you don't like it. You pretend that you like it because God knows everybody else is at the gym pretending that they like it too, when 2/3 of them really don't. And then you reach a point where you say, I can't do this anymore. The gym and exercise just didn't work out for me. Well, it wasn't that exercise didn't work out for you. Yes, the gym didn't work out for you because that's not what you needed. You needed a different form of exercise, but because you didn't know yourself and you didn't have that self awareness, you're not aware of how to take care of yourself. And I hope that
Yeah.
makes sense to people, that once you know yourself, you know what you need. The best way to get to know yourself, I think, is through quiet. Every day, spend 5 minutes. No distractions. Close your eyes. Don't worry about anything. Just breathe in to the count of 8 and then breathe out to the count of 8. Scan your body and see, how are you feeling? Are there areas of tightness? Are you angry about something? Are you upset about something? And are you masking those feelings? Oh, or are you expressing those feelings, appro- appropriately? So that's what I have to say. And now that I've got
Well,
my earbuds back in, what do you want to tell us, Nate?
there's a biological, physiological thing that's happening with us and during this time, and we don't really know it. A lot of people are emotionally immature because they haven't learned how to emotionally grow. So you see childlike behavior come out, going from okay or in a good mood to anger, just like a child would, because they haven't learned and developed in that respect. But also, there's the chemistry that's happening. You wake up in the morning and you go into work, and you wake up and you're in a panic mode because you're like, oh, I'm going to be late for work, and you now start to rush, and your that adrenaline's going, and so now everything is urgent, and you're in this urgency mode, right? So you're going to respond differently because your body's releasing chemicals, right? And if you wake up, and this is one of the exercises that take people through. If you wake up in the morning and oh, my alarm didn't go off, and you see the time, it's 10 a.m. in the morning, you're supposed to be to work at 8 o'clock. That panic kicks in, those chemicals release. You're running around like a chicken with no head, and then you realize, oh, it's Saturday,
Ah,
and all of that disappears. It dissipates, and now you can go back to being that calm. We're doing that all day, every day. And if you haven't trained in this, you're going through this roller coaster ride of up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And then your behavior is reflective of what's happening with those chemicals that are being released in your body. So it's not an easy thing to just learn and say, I'm going to do this. It's work,
yeah.
right? And you need someone that's going to at least be able to give you the tools or help you to get the tools in order to get through it, through something like as simple as road rage, right? Or
Yeah.
becoming aware. Um, but it's a lot of work. It's hard work, and that's why so few people do it. Um, and we get to see the reflection of those who don't do it more often than those that do.
That's true. And a lot of us don't want to know who we are. It's a scary thing to sit with yourself.
Yeah.
It really is because, and I think that's one of the reasons people have a tough time with retirement or losing a job because they're so used to being busy. Even if they hate that job, and even if they say, oh, I could hardly wait until I put my 25 years in or whatever and get out of here, it's something for them to do. It deflects from themselves so they don't have to deal with themselves. They could be busy 8, 9 hours. And like you said, if you're driving an hour to work, you're driving back and you're spending 8, 9 hours at work. By the time you get home, you're going to sleep. So you don't have to deal with yourself. And then all of a sudden comes either a job loss or retirement. And I think even if it's a planned retirement, all of a sudden you have to spend time with yourself because you can't keep yourself busy 24/7. And yet, people that do. You meet up with people that will say, well, at 9 o'clock, I go to this book club. At 10 o'clock, I go to the gym. At 11 o'clock, I do this. At 12 o'clock, I do that. At 1 o'clock, I do this. At 2 o'clock, I eat lunch. At 3 o'clock, I do this. That's self avoidance. You're trying to avoid yourself because you don't know what to do with yourself. And if you could spend time with yourself, look at how you're feeling, look at your boredom, and then say, what could I do to change this? How could I change this? How could I get comfortable now in this situation? And then you take the steps to change it instead of just piling everything together and saying, okay, I don't have to deal with myself. Well, yes, eventually you do have to deal with yourself. And that's when an even bigger problem comes in because now we don't know ourselves at all. And if we're forced to all of a sudden, it creates a lot of problems. The hormones that you talked about, the stress hormones, the fight, flight, or freeze, wreak havoc in our body. And about 70% of illness and disease is related to that fight or flight. So if we're always in that hurry up, let me get this done, I'm stressed out, I don't know what to do mode, we need to calm ourselves down. One of the tools is to take a deep breath. When you take a deep breath, you automatically shut off the stress hormones. Automatically. So the more you could be aware of your breathing, the calmer you could become. And the calmer you become, the more you could look at yourself and say what's going on. Do you have any last words before we close here?
Well, I'm probably going to say something that people aren't going to like, but
Okay,
um,
that's what we do
uh,
here.
yeah, people, like with anything else, this self care, um, it's distorted. Um, there's laziness. Um, People say, "Oh, I'm into self care." Well, what is self care? Oh, I go get my nails done. Oh, I go get a massage. I get my hair. That is laziness at its best as it relates to self awareness and as it relates to self care. People want to do the things that feel good, the touchy feel good stuff. And the thing about that is, and I'm not saying there's something wrong with that because those are things you should do. I mean, I think one of the best kept secrets is women are going to get their feet and nails done. Uh, when I first did that, I'm like, "Ooh, this is great. Women got a well kept secret here," and it is good. But if that's your version of self care, and you're not doing the other work, you're being lazy, and you're lying to yourself, and you're lying to other people about what self care is. And but it's like anything else. Self care is now a fad. Someone put it out there, and they're using the vocabulary or the sayings, right? But the sayings or the work has been dumbed down so much that people aren't getting the real meaning of it and not doing the work. They're doing the fun stuff, part of it,
Right.
right? Um, so a lot of people, uh, because if you're truly into self care and development, people can see right through that, right? Um, I would say to folks, stop lying to yourself, and that's part of that self awareness. is you got to stop lying to yourself in order to overcome and in order to accomplish the self-awareness, um, and have empower other people around you to let you call you on your BS.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I have to say, once this broadcast is over, I'm headed to the nail salon to get a mani and a
Mhm.
pedi. But you're absolutely right. We do all these external things that we think is self-care, when really we have to tend to ourselves. That's really what self-care is what do I need? Do I need to rest? Do I need to take a walk? What do I need? Do I need to calm down? It's all about what do we need as people to be the best that we can be, not just to do things because, yeah, self care and all that is a fad. When you look at a lot of those things, it's all superficial and it's all surface, and surface change does nothing. It's just like getting a manicure. It looks good for a week or two, but then you got to go back and get another manicure. And it's the same thing with superficial self care. It may feel good at the time we're doing it, but it doesn't last. And then we get depressed, we get anxious because we've either read all these self care books, we've listened to all these self care lectures or all these things on social media, and yet we're not changing because we're not becoming self aware. And self awareness starts with us, it doesn't start outside ourselves. And with that, unless, Nate, you have something else to say before we close out?
Oh, you said that very well. I think you're the diplomat.
Oh,
They need to keep me off the mic.
no, no. It's important because here on the Own It platform, what we do is not only are we inspirational, not only do we give you tools, we give you ideas, inspiration, but we also tell it like it is. And that's important because if we don't call each other out, we don't change. If we're not aware of things, how are we going to change? So it's important that, we're not here to fluff. We're here to help people, and we're here to give information to inspire. And that may mean getting you angry at first. That's what it may mean, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But at least we're telling people like it is. We're getting into subjects that a lot of other people just kind of gloss over because, hey, they want all the ratings. And if you say something that may be true that somebody may not like, if they don't tune into me again, what do I do? But to resonate and to be authentic with your audience, you really do have to tell it like it is. So I always thank you for your candor. It's well appreciated. And I think the audience does too, because we've had some good comments. So with that, I'm going to take us out. And until next week, self awareness is the first step to authenticity, and self awareness starts in your heart. Thank you for joining us today.
I have found a place out of time and space, far from city lights, up on greater heights. And I'm flying alone now, up on greater heights.
And